Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, it is once again a privilege to rise in this place on behalf of the good and proud people in the constituency of Port Charlotte, and to give honor to God for bringing us safely over the highways of life in the last 12 months, so that we can be here in soundness of mind and body, and that I can address this honorable place one more time. Lest we forget, Mr. Speaker, next week, Monday, March 15th, will make exactly 1 year when the then acting Minister of Health, Minister Jeffrey Lloyd, announced that the first confirmed case of COVID-19 was in the Bahamas, 61-year-old female. And from that day until now, Mr. Speaker, our nation has faced, as many other nations around the globe has, we've faced several systemic challenges that have required and continue to require our great attention and resolve as a collective society to solve. What we, like many of our global colleagues, have seen is that, among other things, our social, economic, healthcare, and political systems were all ill-prepared for this pandemic. We've seen economies, including ours, brought to a virtual standstill. And more than at any other time in our recent memory, some have called into question their physical and existential survival. We were, Mr. Speaker, in an existential crisis as a result of so much unknown, where we question the meaning, purpose, and value of our lives. And Mr. Speaker, even though the rollout of the vaccine locally and internationally promises and provides us with a little glimmer of hope, the uncertainty of our situation still has many of us questioning what the future holds. What will be the long-term impact of this pandemic on our resiliency? How will we recover? And how long will it take? Now, as I stand here today, Mr. Speaker, I cannot offer any sure definitive answers to any of these questions. And if we are all truthful, particularly because the long-term impact and our recovery are dependent on so many variables working synergistically together, I am doubtful that anyone will be able to give any sureties or definitives. What I can say, though, Mr. Speaker, is that the duration of the impact and the rapidness of our recovery will be dependent on, and is going to call on us as a government, call on us as a people, and call on us as a society to face some real hard truths. And we know that facing the truth is oftentimes difficult because, like the old adage says, the truth hurts. Having to face the truth is often even more difficult because coming face to face with our truth not only hurts, sometimes kills either us or somebody else. Now, when Pastor Dave started us off this morning, Mr. Speaker, he started off by saying that there are many who suffer from a virtue deficit as a result of our various devices or vices. And when we look at where we are in life, as a result of this virtue deficit, confronting or facing the truth of where we are will call for us to look at the role that we played in getting there, the reasons why we played these roles, accepting and taking responsibility for the choices we made in playing this role that has us where we are, forgiving ourselves for making these choices, even if no one else forgives us, forgiving ourselves, and then moving on to where we want to be in life in such a way that our forward movement shows, even if we didn't win, we've learned as a country and as a people, we can do this, Mr. Speaker, if we face up to our truths and face them from a perspective that recognizes the best in ourselves, the best in others, the best in our society and the society around us, affirming over our vices and devices that have held us back, over our problems and failures, affirming our past and present strengths, our successes, and our potential. This perspective, Mr. Speaker, is called appreciative inquiry. Looking at or inquiring into ourselves, into others, and the world around us with an eye of gratefulness, of thankfulness, and indebtedness. This appreciative inquiry, Mr. Speaker, or AI, as it's called for short, is a fancy and modernized way, or is the fancy way of modernizing what the Apostle Paul's words were to his followers in Philippi when he admonished them by saying, "Finally, brethren, whatsoever things are true, whatsoever things are honest, whatsoever things are just, whatsoever things are pure, whatsoever things are lovely, whatsoever things are of good report, if there be any virtue, and if there be any praise, think on these things." But these things, these inquiries, Mr. Speaker, calls on us to begin from a position of recognizing and acknowledging our truths. And as a government, here's a part of our truth when it comes to where we stand today. The truth is that our present circumstances reflect a combination of financial choices made not just by this administration, but every administration that came before it as well. Here's a portion of an address that Sir Lyndon gave to the National Conference of Independence in April of 1972, Mr. Speaker. This is what he said. "The records of the House of Assembly which show that there was a deficit budget in 1962. The revenues of the country even then was not enough to match the expenditures. Incomes, Mr. Speaker," he said, "could not match outgoes." Furthermore, he points out that the then government had at the time been running a deficit budget for years. 1958, 1960, and 1961, in addition to 1962 and 63. Whereas it'll take a considerable amount of time to do justice to explaining the choices made by those governments of the 50s and 60s, 70s, and 80s. I can safely say that from the moment we achieved independence, successive governments have made the choices to deficit spend. They made the choices to deficit spend in order to fund necessary capital work nationally to maintain and in some instances grow government staffing and services, to avoid, until recently, funding increased expenditures with new or increased taxes, to fund repairs and restorations arising from a series of natural disasters, including more recently Dorian and COVID-19, and to support leading public enterprises in order to avoid dislocation of staff and the disruption of services to remote areas of the country. Now, despite the importance in these areas of investing in these areas of national development and stability, when the average social commentator or critic looks at the organizational performance of this engine that we call government, the default position is usually to look at government's performance from a position of what is not working. And building on that, every administration that comes into office looking to fix what is not working in an attempt to maximize the performance of this machinery. Now, along these lines of inquiry, Mr. Speaker, we identify the perceived problems, spend a considerable amount of our time and energy analyzing the possible causes, forming committees to come up with and generate solutions, and hope that we have the right people in place who can go on to implement the best solutions. And when we approach government in this way, Mr. Speaker, after a while and over time, government becomes one big problem that needs to be solved. With this deficit-based view of government sapping energy, motivation, and goodwill sometimes from our people. The F&M government, however, Mr. Speaker, has taken a different approach. When you take a look at the 2017 manifesto of our administration, the subtitle reads, "Continuing its transformational socio-economic growth agenda for the 21st century." As we debate the mid-year budget for our fourth year in office, let us ask ourselves whether we, based on this appreciative inquiry, have been able to live up to that promise. Have we as a government been committed to a transformational socio-economic agenda in this term? But let me say, Mr. Speaker, that if we were to take a look at what our administration has achieved through the lens of appreciative inquiry, in light of the challenges of an ongoing global pandemic and coming out of the disasters of a monster hurricane, we cannot conclude anything else. We have done a gargantuan job. Now, does this mean that we should be patting ourselves on the back and becoming complacent in our great works? No, Mr. Speaker, because there are still greater works to be done. And I propose that in our final year, in this term, we can do more. We can do better. That we will do more and that we will do better. You see, Mr. Speaker, prior to Dorian, this administration, aided by a deliberate decision to contain fiscal spending and to increase VAT, was on a path to a more sustainable financial situation. No denying it. With GFS deficit headed downward towards 1.8%, something not achieved since the late 1990s, early 2000. and an economic growth exceeding 2% consecutively. Up to May 2019, after only 2 years in office, this government reduced the deficit by more than 130 million. This, Mr. Speaker, was a 51% improvement. Now, subsequent to that, the destruction wrought by Dorian and COVID-19 compounded the difficulty of achieving such improved physical targets for everybody. 192 countries. We're not alone. And they will likely to continue so, Mr. Speaker, if we do not continue to capitalize on the measures that were working prior to these two natural disasters, as well as capitalize on the spirit of producer ingenuity that the very same two disasters sparked in many of us within the last 2 years. If we are to improve our condition, we must focus our energies on what works. Focus our energy on what is working and the resulting success stories. You will hear each minister. You've heard some, and you'll hear some for the continuation of this week, speaking about what has worked, speaking about what is working, and speaking about their success stories. Now, as a side note, Mr. Speaker, I just have to throw this in here because, side officer threw something out last night. Let me say, their proposed economic plan. Well, that's about the only thing, but I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on that, but this is all I want to say. Not only that, well, question is, how will they make that up? Where will it come from? There's no answer there. There are a lot of unanswered things in there in their attempt to pander. But here's the thing, Mr. Speaker. The proposed economic plan put out yesterday by the side opposite, despite attempting to represent newness, does nothing more than recognize and pay tribute to this government's achievements by seeking to propose improvements on works already in working progress. The only difference, like I said, Mr. Speaker, is theirs is couched in language that panders to the Bahamian people. But Mr. Speaker, they do say an imitation is the best form of flattery. But I digress. I'm going to come back to that at a later date. But you see, Mr. Speaker, this government has already been betting big on the Bahamian entrepreneurial spirit and small business as the backbone of a transforming and a transformative society. They launched the Small Business Development Unit with an initial pledge of some $25 million. Now more than 1,500 businesses spread across some 30 industries with more than 15 islands. They've accessed capital in the staggering amount of $65+ million. This amounts to more than 7,000 new entrepreneurs since the SBDC was formed in 2018. At this rate, in another 5 years, and as the economy turns around, we could possibly be celebrating between 3,000 to 5,000 new small businesses and tens of thousands of new entrepreneurs operating within and contributing to economic growth and development. It would only require us, Mr. Speaker, to support our local businesses above all others, to ensure the successful growth of both the small business sector and our overall economic performance. Let us continue to focus on what is working with an eye on how much better it can be. And on that note, Mr. Speaker, we would also have to remember that in 2019, we saw record tourism numbers for the Bahamas, with the highest number of arrivals by air and sea recorded in the country's history. By the end of 2019, right before COVID, foreign air and sea arrivals had totaled more than 7.2 million, some 9% increase over 2018 figures. And stopover visitors alone were the highest in recorded Bahamian history at 1.78 million people. And whereas our tourism sector has taken a beating from the COVID, we recognize that it did not die on us. As it begins to recover, Mr. Speaker, as it begins to regain its strength and recover, we must understand that if we did it before, we can do it again. And not just, especially with this minister. He's already shown us that he did it once, and we believe that he can do it again. And not just do it again, Mr. Speaker, but do it even better than before. The minister will speak more to his successes, to what is working, to what has worked, to what is working, and the success stories. And he speaks later what's already in the pipeline. So, as the sector rebounds and our Minister of Tourism works to create more equitable partnership opportunities for Bahamian entrepreneurs with the hoteliers and cruise lines, Bahamians must dig deep and create those kinds of new experiences which will showcase who we are as a people and make the Bahamas not just a destination anymore, but an experience that we are excited to share. The agricultural sector and small farmers in particular, Mr. Speaker, are preparing to offer this new kind of experience, guided by the newly formed Agri-Tourism Council that is co-chaired, that I co-chair with Janet Johnson. It's a partnership between the Ministry of Agriculture and Tourism. And the aim of the council is to certify and sanction farming enterprise to be a part of this niche tourism product that links travelers with locally produced agricultural products, services, and experiences. This can include a tour of a farm, Mr. Speaker, picking fruits and vegetables and eating them in the preparations at farm-to-table eateries on the local farms or in the local restaurants, feeding animals or staying at an Airbnb on a farm that can provide all of these above services. This new Bahamian experience that we'll be unveiling with the reopening of the tourism economy looks to provide an opportunity for visitors to experience real rural life in the area where these farms are located, to taste the local food and become familiar with various farming techniques and tasks. Additionally, with more targeted approaches to our spending, it is my hope and my belief that in the next 5 years, more focus will be placed by this administration on investments in the creative and performing arts and industries, with the aim of adding to this niche agri-tourism market, making the Bahamas the performing arts capital of the Caribbean. Our history as a nation and as a people is so rich, Mr. Speaker, and there are so many stories about us that are ripe for the telling. When the world comes to our shores, and our government must be prepared to invest in the necessary sacred spaces where we can share these stories in all forms and fashion, whether in film, in a play, in dance, in music, in art, in fashion, or in song. With targeted spending, we can create the region's first real high school for the performing arts, to train and produce individuals to sustain an industry that is just looking for an opportunity. Our young people, Mr. Speaker, are dying, literally and figuratively, for this kind of opportunity. And now we have an opportunity to improve on what already exists, what already works, by creating new experiences and attractions that will rebuild our reputation as a leading tourism destination. Our tourism sector, Mr. Minister, is poised for a rebound. Our tourism sector, Mr. Minister, is poised for an unprecedented rebound. So let's continue to focus on what is working, with an eye on seeing how much better it can be if we continue to work on what we already have. That's why I'm just preparing the people for this. This government has been building and continues to build and build better, Mr. Speaker. Again, I say we have not been performing, or we have not been a perfect government over the last 4 years. We've made some errors along the way, and that's the truth. But there's a saying that progress is better than perfection, because perfection is unattainable. So whereas we've not always won in our trying, we have, what I'm speaking is undeniable. We have and are continuing to learn from our losses and grow to be a better, more progressive, more transformational government, as we have promised. And that's the truth. In this administration, I'm smiling because the member from Cat Island sort of whispering that I'm trying to perform for. I don't have to perform. Only performance is for God by prayer. and I think if we were to really look at this situation, if we were to look at this situation, not only my fate might be in jeopardy. But be brave. Say it out loudly. Let's have that conversation. In this administration, positive steps are being taken to both improve the fiscal situation while at the same time fund some very important national priorities, including, among other things, the reconstruction of Abaco and Grand Bahama, increased access to education from preschool to tertiary education for young Bahamians, with increased attendance at UB, BTVI, and BAMSI, improving infrastructure throughout our family of islands, improving the socio-economic development of the over-the-hill community, reducing crime and recidivism, strengthening borders and stopping the trafficking in persons, modernizing the public service through technology and training, creating an environment that improves the ease of doing business. It's all in the pipeline, Mr. Speaker, all in progress, ready to gush out. This and even more, Mr. Speaker. So recognizing the work in progress and building upon these work ensures that the nation's second and third most important economic engines will be restarted and greater growth will occur once again within our economy. Building on our works in education means that we will continue to provide incentives for our young people entering the educational system to make higher education and the lifelong pursuit of knowledge, innovation, and inquiry a more important pursuit to expand their options in our changing society and economy. Continuing infrastructural works in our family islands means that we continue putting in place the necessary structures that can ultimately incentivize individuals to return to their respective island homes, to help with the building and rebuilding process so as to make their respective island communities just as vibrant as the capital, New Providence. Continued work in our over-the-hill communities, Mr. Speaker, means that these communities will be so transformed to show that both urban life and city life can and should be beautiful. Now, Mr. Speaker, I'm a great believer in the notion that people take cues about who they are based on what their natural environment says about them. And if we're able to continue to improve on the works in and take advantage of the benefits available through the over-the-hill development initiative to improve these urban environments and make them a beautiful place to live, perhaps we'll see a positive transformation in the residents of those areas as well. Never before have I seen a prime minister who has taken so much of an interest in the environmental development of our over-the-hill and urban areas as a priority. And I'm very excited to see what these areas will become with a little more time and focus. A continued investment in improving the living conditions in our over-the-hill communities, including Fort Charlotte, Mr. Speaker, will naturally have a positive impact on crime and health statistics. And with the savings realized in these areas as a result, these savings can be reinvested in other areas of national importance like youth, sports, and culture. What a wonderful day that will be, Mr. Speaker. We just need to continue our focus on what is working, knowing that it'll get better. It can be better if we continue to work on building up what we have and making it better. In addition to these funding priorities, we cannot forget the work that has taken place at BPL and through NIB. Now, the Bahamas, I got on a limb, Mr. Minister, and say that the Bahamas Power and Light Company can be considered a poster child for what focused and dedicated teams that our government agencies can do when they are determined and have little to no political interference. So I'm about to go there. So our Minister of Works will no doubt have more to say on the transformation of this agency, but I want to point out that although stable energy growth is directly linked to well-being and prosperity across the globe, BPL has at last been put on a path toward meeting the Bahamas' growing demands for energy in a safe and environmentally responsible manner. Never before has it been done, Mr. Speaker. What we see now at BPL is an increase in reliability and efficiency that has been translated into a concurrent reduction in electricity costs. For nations such as the Bahamas, reliable and affordable energy is fundamental. It can improve and even save lives. For us, reliable energy supports expanded industry, modern agriculture, increased trade, and improved transportation. These are the building blocks that will help Bahamians escape poverty and create better lives. And these are the building blocks that we have now, this administration, now started and looks to continue laying at BPL, at NIB, one of our social safety nets. The work of the good minister, the outgoing executive director, and the team at BPL, at NIB are to be commended, and our minister at social services as well. And the team at social services are to be commended and applauded. We would have heard about the unprecedented amount of support and benefits being offered to the Bahamian people at NIB. We've heard of the unprecedented amount of support totaling nearly $230 million. This would have represented income and support and unemployment assistance that began with the onset of COVID-19, continues today. This type of support, Mr. Speaker, is the first of its kind in the history of the Bahamas. And with no sure end to this pandemic, it continues, and I know Bahamians are appreciative. Our environment, Mr. Speaker, continues to show signs of improvement as a result of the few steps taken by this government to end the dump fires and enact 10 solid pieces of environmental legislation since coming to office designed to protect our natural patrimony in an age when exploitation of our natural environment has been the order of the day. As a result of the leadership of the Minister for the Environment and his team, we now have a legal definition of natural resources and a framework to hold accountable those who wish to access those natural resources. In addition, we have strengthened the regime around the built environment, advancing both the green agenda, which means ensuring sustainable management of the natural ecosystem of land, water, and air, and the brown agenda, which deals with managing waste, energy, transport, and building. The Environmental Planning and Protection Act, Mr. Speaker, 2019, and the Ministry of Environment Act of 2019 gives us standing to protect our environment and the teeth to enforce that protection. Now, when the Minister of Agriculture addresses this House and the Bahamian people this week, Mr. Speaker, we will also hear about the number of exciting farming initiatives and ventures that are already operational in our local communities and those that are about to come on stream in the upcoming weeks. Now, I don't want to preempt the minister's message as it relates to this, Mr. Speaker, but the Bahamian people can rest assured that the work in progress under the Minister of Agriculture will revitalize the agricultural sector once again and have it take a place of national prominence that is long, long overdue. Now, Mr. Speaker, it is likely that even after the COVID-19 pandemic crisis abates, I'm saying it's likely that we will continue to deficit spend. And there's nothing wrong with this per se, as I've said prior. But it's my charge that we ensure that this spending is directed and prioritized in an increasing way into the areas that would make the most difference for our nation, including education and the creative industries, entrepreneurship, and infrastructure throughout the nation, through housing, sporting development and health, and national security. We should spend to build economic prosperity and pride in the years to come. New taxes or increases in taxes should precede economic growth and be directed at further bolstering the growth and social gains to the Bahamian people. In the end, this is what I see. If this administration continues to spend with that in mind, and I believe if we continue on the current trajectory, I see a resilient economy earmarked by dependable, affordable government services, delivered in a pristine and protected environment in which more and more Bahamians can and will own a piece of the economy, both through sharing in the national patrimony and by engaging in robust entrepreneurship, protected by a comprehensive and adaptable social security network. This coronavirus crisis, Mr. Speaker, has given us a good opportunity to stop, to review, and in some instances to cancel all that is non-essential in our lives. It has given us an opportunity to reset, to be more appreciative of the life that we have, with the chance still to make life-changing decisions that can drastically alter our future for the better. For this to work, however, Mr. Speaker, we, both government and citizens, must end this culture of deficit thinking and adopt a growth mindset in which we can frame our perspective toward a vision of possibility and aspiration, with a focus on what is already working, imagining how it could be, imagining how good it should be, committing to what will be, so that this government, our people, and this nation will no longer be a problem waiting for a solution, but we'll become a government, a people, and a nation waiting to happen. To see what emerges from something that seems like nothing much, because we begin to focus on those innate things that we have going on in us that makes us more than enough. If we only can make the change in perspective. According to Amy Armstrong, Courtney Holmes, and Denise Hemmings, Mr. Speaker, this idea of an appreciative inquiry and the appreciative inquiry framework, this new way of looking at our position, provides a guide for both individual and systems on how to change negative thinking patterns, live responsibly, affirm our life purpose, and sustain our world, to recognize that positive changes can arise out of trauma and adversity. It recognizes that we can move toward a model of abundance in which suffering connects to gratitude, appreciation, and a bias toward intentional action that point out that AI provides an opportunity for us to realign our thinking and our engagement in a way that will help us to be more strategic, more resilient, and strength-based in the future so that we may facilitate positive and sustainable change. And in doing so, emerge as better individuals, as better communities on the other side of COVID-19. With that said, Mr. Speaker, Port Charlotte gladly supports this midterm budget proposal. And in supporting this budget, I ask the Bahamian people to recognize that there will be a next time of large-scale disruption, whether it be naturally occurring or as a result of human behavior, and that we must be prepared by building upon the experiences learned through this epidemic. Where no opportunity existed before COVID-19, COVID-19 has forced some of us to rise above our situation and use our ingenuity. I need to slow it down. That's fine. Again, COVID-19 has forced some of us to rise above our situation and use our ingenuity to create new ones. Some we never would have given thought to or realized that we could do if COVID did not come. This is the lesson of this pandemic, Mr. Speaker. I'm paraphrasing Randall Fox. It uncovered, this pandemic uncovered strong men and women who saw in this great obstacle opportunities, who saw in every difficulty a challenge to overcome, and in every stumbling block, a stepping stone. I only ask, Mr. Speaker, that we continue, and not just, Mr. Speaker, our government, that we continue on our current trajectory and build upon what is working with an eye of gratefulness, of thankfulness, and indebtedness to our government, to each other, and to the God who is our keeper and sustainer. That, Mr. Speaker, $40. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? The chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Pine Ridge.
Yes, ma'am. Proverbs 29:2. When the righteous are in authority, the people rejoice. When the wicked bear rule, the people mourn. Proverbs 29:7. The righteous considers the cause of the poor, but the wicked regarded not to know it. Mr. Speaker, indulge me. Let me first of all take this opportunity to congratulate Central Grand Bahama, the Honorable Hiram Lewis, for his elevation to the Ministry of Youth, Sports, and Culture. Also to West Grand Bahama, Lakeisha Parker Edgecombe, for her elevation to the cabinet. And I wish to say, sincerely from my heart, I wish you both well, and I don't envy you for the place where you are at. To Garden Hills, the Honorable Brenzel Rowe, I want to wish you well, sir, on your retirement. And I want to thank you for being the good gentleman that you have been to me in this place. I say thank you. I wish you all the best. And I know that you're retiring, but let me state for the record, you're not the oldest in this house, nor were you the oldest in the cabinet. But I understand your retirement. I wish you well. And you'll be surprised. Some folks may be joining you unexpectedly. Today is also the day of International Women's Day. I want to take this opportunity to thank the many women who passed by way of death and living. Their legacies go on throughout this country. And we want to thank you because we men could not be what we are if we did not have you beside us. I'm not one of those who believe that women are supposed to be over us or under us, but I believe God created women to be beside us. We're not your competitors. We are here to complement each other. Bahamian women, we love you and appreciate you and enjoy this day and indeed this month. Mr. Speaker, on March 1st, I was perturbed, disturbed, distressed, dismayed, and left in a state of shock, like most to hear that South Andros and Mangrove Key will not be seeking the nomination for the PLP in the upcoming general election. I've known the member for some time, and like all of us in this vicinity, he's not a perfect individual, and neither are any of us. Nonetheless, his heart for his constituents and his political affiliation seem to be in the right place. Even the Bible tells us men look on the outward appearance, which would be the physical demeanor, the intellectual capacity, and/or articulation ability. But God deals and looks at the heart. South Andros and Mangrove Key signify that this is the end. I beg to differ. I believe that he and I shall cross paths again politically. And who knows, perhaps this time we'll be fighting on the same team for the same cause. South Andros and Mangrove Key, I want all to say, all I want to say is when it comes to your political career, I don't see it as a full stop. It's simply, in my view, a comma. You've come to a political comma so as to recollect your thoughts to complete your political sentence. Presently, your political statement, journalistically, is incomplete. You've only just but paused to complete the sentence. Time will help you to do so. Stay strong and be patient. Remember, politics makes strange bedfellows. Politics is fluid. Always keep an open mind. No application needed. But I know I have not applied. Let the words of my mouth and the meditation of my heart be acceptable in thy sight. O God, you are alone my strength and my redeemer. Mr. Speaker, as I am perpendicular in this place, I do so on behalf of the good and gracious people of the Pine Ridge constituency, who alone affords me this opportunity to be here these almost 4 years. I wish to inform them of my gratitude towards them, and I look forward to our harmonious relationships as we continue to represent their views and concern as a constituency. In this day and time, people are looking for representation that is about them, the people, not a leader, a political party, or special interest views over their concerns and opinions and needs. Mr. Speaker, today I've come to speak on behalf of the people. And one day asks, which people? The people whom we said it would be their time. Sadly enough, time is running out, and many throughout the archipelago are asking, will it ever be our time? Which people? Because the common, average, and ordinary man, they felt ignored these almost 4 years. Mr. Speaker, before I continue to speak on behalf of the people, let me express my gratitude from the people, particularly the people of Hudson Estate, to the Cabinet of the Bahamas and the Minister of Work, and now Deputy Prime Minister. Some 3 years ago, I spoke to the then minister and agitated for the repairing of the roads in my constituency, despite them being located in a private subdivision. The minister assured me that he would see what he could do to assist. In March of 2020, he gave me a letter on behalf of the government, informing me that he would assist and that I should specify areas needed for repair. I then wrote back to the Ministry of Works, copied the minister, and gave them 3 areas, namely Hudson Estate, Freeport Ridge, and Heritage by the fire station. I am grateful for the assistance through agitation, persistency, and governmental cooperation. I even had the opportunity when the minister sent personnel down from Nassau to ride through these areas and personally show the ministry's personnel these roads without any hullabaloo. On behalf of the people of Pine Ridge, and especially the people of Hudson Estate, we thank you sincerely and wish that you would move feverishly to the other areas recommended by this member of Parliament. More than that, not more than that. But I'm fair. But more than that, Mr. Speaker, I'm happy in this regard. You don't have to push me. I'm a fair person. It is an accomplishment for these roads to be repaired. It never happened under my predecessors, Ann Passetti, Kwesi Thompson, or Dr. Michael Darbo. It happened under a Frederick McAlpine MPship. And I can't, and you can't change that no matter how hard you try. Now, I'm fair, so just listen. Buckle up. We got an hour to go. Buckle up. There are those who would say it's election season and they're doing it to put egg on my face. Well, I say it really doesn't matter why they're doing it as long as my people get better roads. It's been a long time coming. And if it's done to put egg on my face, I'll take the egg on my face, but in the end, it's still being done, whether for good, bad, or ugly, because of MP McAlpine for the people of Hudson Estate. So we thank you, government of the Bahamas, for hearing our cry on behalf of the people of Pine Ridge, particularly Hudson Estate, Freeport Ridge, and Heritage near the fire station. I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The peoples whose roads were and are dilapidated, deplorable, and destructive to their vehicles. Mr. Speaker, what I find interesting in this period that is swiftly approaching, known as silly season, it amazes me how potential candidates and some MPs can now fix roads and find asphalt for the street. But most time when these persons are elected thereafter, you can hardly get a speed bump while they serve in government. Can I speak? I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people who told me to tell you, you fooled me once, shame on you. You fooled me twice, shame on me. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamas electorate is much smarter than we give them credit for. They're tired of these same old games with the same old players, and even if they don't have the same players, it's the same puppet masters with the same play card. The Haymans are tired of being taken advantage of by many in political authority who act like enemies in here, but in some cases cut deals with each other behind closed doors. I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people who told me to tell you the political tricksters are about to be tricked. Mr. Speaker, let me say, after listening to the Prime Minister's recent communication on the mid-year budget, I, like many Bahamians, are pleased to hear about the Bahamas Games, restoration, revival, and rejuvenation. To commence once again now, take note, July 2023. The property initiative in the West is a good one. However, the government must see to it that a certain standard is maintained so as not to devalue property in the surrounding area. While a blow is being thrown for some other people, let me throw a blow for my people. When it comes to properties, our schools, social services, and our hospital, they all must belong to Bahamians, and they ought to reap the benefits therein. Period. Full stop. Exclamation mark. I make no apology for that view. This country can be where everyone else can benefit from it except Bahamians. Bahamas Games, property out west, they all sound good. But in the eyes of most, this is just electioneering. and more campaign promises to woo Bahamians towards your political corner. Many Bahamians are waiting on the last set of promises. Freedom of Information Act properly implemented and enacted. Fixed dates for elections. True equity and equality for our Bahamian women. And oh, how could we forget? You promised to repeal that tax. How did that work out? That's why they said a promise is a comfort to a fool. I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people who told me to tell you, we're tired of your promises. We want performance. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister also indicated that he would put more emphasis on the poor in the next term. I don't know about next term. However, the Bahamian people are saying, next, the Prime Minister inference as it relates to the reference to the poor puts an ambiguity as to who the emphasis was placed on in this term of his office. Certainly, this was not the people's time, but I guess if they give you another term, it will be. Like, seriously? Your poor decisions will cause the poor to deal with you. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamian people have not forgotten this 4 years. I'll say that again. The Bahamian people have not forgotten this 4 years, nor do they suffer with temporary amnesia. Neither are they senile in their thinking. They've not just forgotten the last 4 years, but I would venture to say they've remembered the last 9 years. 5 under the previous government, and 4 under the present government. It's a free-for-all. I run it in Pine Ridge. The government for the last 9 years has left a bitter taste in the mouth of the Bahamian citizenry. They don't know who to trust. They don't know who to trust. And quite frankly, they don't trust the one who presently holds office. And the one trying to get into office, they don't trust him either. The view and perceived perception is one political organization is corrupt and scandalous, while the other is now labeled corrupt and incompetent. I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people who are tired of jokey leaders who are trying to turn us into a jokey town. Mr. Speaker, when the Prime Minister presented his mid-year budget communication, he looked across the aisle and said, "Mark, if I call it, you're gone." I came to speak on behalf of the people. 40? Which people? The people who told me to tell you, call it. And when you call it, you'll be gone before I'm gone. The people told me to remind you, lest you forgot, sir. Through you, Mr. Speaker. The people told me to remind you, President Trump, gone. Premier Charlene Robertson, gone. And sooner or later, you'll be gone. The people also told me to tell the leader of the opposition, buckle up, fasten your seatbelt, buckle up. The people also told me to tell the leader of the opposition, even though the prime minister may be gone, don't count your eggs before they hatch. He may be gone, but you have not yet reached. Well, they have to. I don't throw blow, you know. You don't, I don't throw blow. I let you throw the first blow. Everybody, this is a free fall. This is nomination time. Since everybody nominating, I needed to be known Pine Ridge is nominating. So if you want to fight, let's fight. Let's fight. I'm in it to win it. Mr. Speaker, the Bahamian people are disgusted, disgruntled, I can tell you soon, and discouraged with political parties as usual in this country. It's about to change right before our very eyes. I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people who are disgusted, disgruntled, and discouraged with party politics. And they have now grown by leaps and bounds throughout this nation. Mr. Speaker, the government will not get away by using Dorian and COVID-19 as justification for their economic failures, indiscretion, lack of planning, or vision. Dorian? Shh. Listen, you'll hear. Dorian and or COVID-19 only prove to the Bahamian citizenry the leadership quality or lack thereof. You hear what they said to me? Bahamas, through you, Mr. Speaker, that when I said that the government is not to use Dorian and COVID-19 as a justification for the economic failures, indiscretion, lack of planning or vision, they said the rest of the world used it. If I'm correct, so did President Trump and Charlene Robinson. And we see where it put them. Had this government done some things that the vast majority, I can tell you about that. He was anachronistic and antiquated. That's why. Wholeness. I'm not talking about wholeness. I'm talking about those who lost to wholeness. Had this government done some things that the vast majority may have felt in their pocket prior to these catastrophic and pandemic events, then you may have received a blight from the Bahamian people. I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people who said, if you really made it about their time, perhaps they would have considered you next time. Mr. Speaker, no government should be naive to believe that they can ignore the people, their wishes, their requests, and abandon their promises to the national and expect to receive a favorable response. Nor should an opposition who was scandal-ridden when last in governance perceived as corrupt with alleged deal-cutting politicians while we're still waiting on a proper excuse about Banzi fiasco and the former deputy prime minister who hardly said anything or rebuked his former leader for the many governmental political travesties when last in office. Don't tell me what not to do when you all do it every day, all day in here. Let me break it down. They said you were too quiet for someone who wants to be prime minister of this country while you were so close to the top. Respectfully, sir. Through you, Mr. Speaker. I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people you all told and convince yourself in this season that you are all national parties, and the people must therefore look to y'all and must elect y'all. Well, to you national parties, I'm a national voice, and I always intend to speak on the people's behalf, and they naturally listen because they want truth to power. Mr. Speaker, every election, the people get wiser. They're playing the game well. They've been around long enough to see money get beat and people with no money win. I'll say that again, because I want to encourage you, behemoths, to continue to stay wise and continue to play the game well as you have been. It was these national parties who told you that when they come, take the money and still do what you got to do. And depending on what side of the vise they're sitting on, they make the statement. They've been around, the behemoths, you've been around long enough to see money get beat and people with no money win. Behemoths will take your money, rum, t-shirt, and food, and still vote their conscience. And even if you change the lines, that can't change their mind. Bahamas, be careful for those who will make charitable donations to your personal cause, because you have one political organization, every time they show up to win, the money gets funny. That's what I mean. Mr. Speaker, the Ministry of Finance in his communication during the 2021 mid-year budget outlined the government's plans and strategies to navigate during these challenging times by including Provision 2, protect the wellness of our citizens and residents, maintain economic stability during COVID-19 induced crisis, and plant seeds for an accelerated recovery. The Minister of Finance said, in order to do this in an environmental of fiscal constraints, the government decided to focus on 5 priority areas. I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people who said that your 5 priority areas were left wanting. They said to tell you if the Bahamas isn't good for all of us, it's not good for any of us. I'll be the first to say, you can't help all. But when you're the government, you should seek to at least help most. You must go beyond family, friends, and lovers. And for the record, every one of us in here have family, friends, and lovers. So don't treat folks any kind of how, because also those family, friends, and lovers will remember what you do to those who love their family, friends, and lovers. Mr. Speaker, in the Resilience Bahamas Plan, the government said they would not compromise our public health and safety. To date, they led, so they say, a science-driven COVID response that curtailed the spread of the virus and made our response the envy of the Caribbean. So they say. Mr. Speaker, no one wants or wanted this government to compromise the public health safety. I don't believe no one in here wants anyone to die as a result of this virus. However, the public health and safety was compromised when this government opened the doors in July 2020, allowing people into the country, citizens included, who had traveled within the 72-hour time frame without taking a COVID test. There was a time in this region when our standing in the global sphere in response to this pandemic was dismal, to say the least. 180 persons died as a result of this virus under your watch. Only God knows how many died from Dorian. That took a little more than a year to bury those bodies that were under your care and watch. When it comes to Bahamian lives, one death is too many. So you have nothing to pat yourself on the back. For as it relates to the death from Dorian or the pandemic, we had well over and still growing, well over 8,000 cases throughout the entire archipelago. In the minds of many Bahamians, these are just the recorded cases. Mr. Speaker, there's some within the health department and also many Bahamians who question the accuracy of the dashboard. It doesn't mean that this is the case, but many feel the numbers are higher than purported for infections and death. May I also remind this government that there were many lockdowns that led to can't do this and can't do that without, don't let him go see you, Bamboo Town. Stay down, because it don't look good. Don't let him goosey you. May I remind this government, I never blamed the government for that. I stated how many people died under your watch. You can't change that, which is also globally. I know that there's over 500,000 in the United States. Nobody's blaming you for the deaths, but I'm telling you that they died on your watch. And regardless whether you are the government, you must take responsibility for the good, the bad, and the ugly. I'm deep down in the spirit right now. May I also remind this government that there were many lockdowns that led to can't do this and can't do that without any scientific data for justification. I.e., let me finish, then you could pop up like popcorns. I.e., the beach. You could go to church, but you had limitations on funerals. You didn't tell us what was the scientific data, how many people went to the beach and caught COVID, or how many people were sitting in a funeral as a result and caught COVID. Well, then they should have given you the statistic before you open your mouth so you could know how to justify your point. I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people who sent me to tell you, you said you saved lives, but you didn't save livelihood. Stay tuned. We all gonna find out. Mr. Speaker. Now you talk about IMF, you gotta be clear now because there are many acronyms for IMF. The latest one was, well, no, y'all don't want me to say that, but I assume y'all are talking about, I know, monetary funding, but they got some other abbreviations for that. Just in case, okay? Mr. Speaker, the government plan stated that they would seek to protect and sustain employment. At the mid-year point, they claimed they protected 14,000 private sector jobs. However, Mr. Speaker, the government failed to tell us how many jobs were lost during COVID period. The labor report had indicated that some 40 to 50% are currently unemployed. Is the government willing to supply us with the statistics of unemployment so that we can better comprehend the severity of our economy? During the COVID experience, government shut down businesses and many persons became unemployed. Hence, we were unable to meet mortgage payments and rental payments. Evictions and foreclosures are at an all-time high. The government made no provision legislatively to protect homeowners, tenants, and landlords. And Mr. Speaker, through you, Bahamas, so many women are living out of their cars with their children, and it is at an all-time high. Didn't just start happening, but it is far more today than it's ever been in the history of this country. While you're trying to push a marijuana agenda and the expulsion of criminal records for those who have been charged with a limited amount of ganja found on them, and I have no objections to this. Make sure the record of those persons who were charged before the court for violating COVID-19 curfew are also record-free, and that they too will also have an expulsion of their record for selling coconut while trying to survive during the pandemic and going to the public pump for water to cook and bathe their skin. I came to speak on behalf of the people. I'm glad you asked. Which people? This one is for you especially. You could identify with it. Which people? The people who told me to tell you just how hard you were on them and told the police to book them 1 minute after 10 p.m. They will treat you just how you treated them. Talk, McAlpine, talk. Mr. Speaker, the plan stated that the government would not let our citizens go hungry. And 6 months later, they claim they spent $24 million on food assistance through the National Food Distribution, and they fed 72,000 households. I'm going to make a point, but before I get to that point, let me say this. This whole thing, which brought me to reminisce, you'll understand this, Garden Hill. The former Prime Minister, the Honorable Perry Gladstone Christie, gave out hundreds of grocery bags prior to the election on the park. I vividly remember that. People came lined up, received the grocery bag. And when the bell rang, just like we await now, they didn't even give him a choice. With grocery bag and all, they put him into full retirement. Normally they would spare that one and then cause them to resign thereafter. I want to commend, Mr. Speaker, I want to commend the government for its effort to feed its citizens. Let me say it again. I want to commend the government for its effort to feed its citizens. 1 million a week for soup kitchen. I nearly considered opening up a soup kitchen myself. I still don't fathom, however, South Andros, how you could set up a committee to feed people and not consider putting someone like Bishop Walter Hanschel on it, who've been doing this for years and feeding thousands of people. Why do we always seek novice to do what experienced people have been doing? So sad. This seems to happen in every arena in this country. Mr. Speaker, the government, however, must recognize, despite its efforts to feed the citizenry, far more people are going to bed hungry in this country than any other time in our history. The government's effort to feed people is commendable. But you must recognize that the little box, in some cases, the $80, the $40, the $20, could only last 2 days, if that much. People are becoming more desperate to feed their family and to survive. They can't hardly find food. And to add insult to injury, they're out of work and you're turning off lights and water. Hey, but it's the people's time. Mr. Speaker, in the Resilient Bahamas Plan, the government said it would sustain a domestic economy and relieve the economic burden on citizens. The government informed us that they invested $45 million in business community loans and grants, and $83.5 million in construction projects to stimulate the economy. Again, this all sounds good. I believe it was Sir Lyndon who said to me in this nation one time ago, paper will sit still and you can write anything on it. The government talks about business loans and grants and construction stimulation, yet the domestic economy continues to spiral out of control. The government is yet to tell us how the foreign investment projects in the country is going to benefit the Bahamian economy and employment. The minister told us that the Bahamian dollar is strong and will not be devalued. We say great. However, the economic reality for Bahamians is that we feel devalued since they're coming to office. The government burnt us with this 12% VAT. That's a noose around the average citizen neck. And if you catch a number in this country, the government has now decided that they want to tax patrons and waited until things got worse to do so. The biggest employment in the country at this time is the government. Hotels can barely keep the lights on. And even though they talk about good bookings, Minister, through you, Mr. Speaker, Freetown, hotels can barely keep the lights on. And even though they talk about good bookings, Anne's and Beanstown, you have to hold your breath because cancellation have become the order of the day. Everything seems to be going up except our salaries. Shh, 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 shh. Don't do that, Beans and Grantstown. You have all. Shh, don't. Because, no, I'm just trying to say, at the end of the day, let me remind you, Bahamas, one thing I've learned, Mr. Speaker, through you, Bahamas, you could build a skyscraper in your constituency. But when they mad with your leader, they mad with you. Everything seems to be going up except our salaries. And thank God for Jesus. He never failed me yet, nor disappoint me. And once you nominate you, you're nominated. Everything seems to go up except our salaries. And we're overtaxed with the little that we have. We're overtaxed with the little that we have. The government spent $100 million on some Godzilla machine called Wasilla. And BPL still can't get it right. Mr. Speaker, how can domestic and foreign investment strive in a country that can't properly keep the lights on? Well, hold on. Imagine how much further this country would be if the government would have given these tax breaks, grants, and loans to businesses prior to Dorian and COVID-19. You may have saved lives, but you killed dreams and the economy. I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people who lost their businesses, their life savings, and their entrepreneurial drive. Mr. Speaker, finally, the plan articulated the government intent to use this time to accelerate economic and public governance reform and to prepare country for a strong and robust rebound. The government testified that they made significant progress in digital transformation and advancing key public financial management and legislative reform. The Minister of Finance articulated the acceleration of the economic and public governance reform, but he didn't tell us how. How are you going to get the tourists back? How are the taxi drivers, hair braiders, and straw vendors ought to survive in the meantime? How do we pay our mortgage and rent without a job? And how long will NIB keep paying out? Will there be any money left for others who paid to the NIB scheme and our future children? How do we pay tuition and assist our children who are overseas in school? When it comes to this government, the economy, we are left with more questions than answers. Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister, the doctor, if you please, has diagnosed the illness of the nation's economy. The prognosis is there for all to see. However, the doctors failed to do what the doctors failed to do is to prescribe the right economic medication so that we can have a speedy recovery. Mr. Speaker, the government talk about digital progress and transformation. We've been talking about this for the last 20 plus years and still can't seem to get it right. And getting money for it, practically almost in every budget, and still can't get it right. By the way, has anybody seen the tech hub in Grand Bahama? I can't seem to locate it. I've been searching for it. Where is it? I'm talking about the tech hub now in Grand Bahama. Okay? And even those of us who can now get our passport online, we ask the government to be vigilant and make sure there's no hanky-panky when it comes to our Bahamian passports. So be vigilant, okay? That's all right. You never heard of good hackers? No, Jesus, hackers. Technical hackers. I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people whose pockets are empty, their cupboards are bare, and their children are hungry. Mr. Speaker, the people want to know, has the Oban file that went missing been found? Has the lease been laid on the table of the house for the post office that is located in the town center mall? I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people who want to know where are the missing Oban files and how much is the post office costing us and for how long? Mr. Speaker, perhaps another time I'll tell you, if it's permitted, to tell you about Grand Bahama. I noticed that the government has laid on the table, however, legislation to put the Grand Bahama Airport under the Airport Authority. All I can say on behalf of the people of Pine Region, by extension, the people of Grand Bahama, that we hope they didn't let the people swing them again like they swung them with the hotel. But in the meantime, Grand Bahama still remains a land of no. No hotel, no jobs, no hospital, no airport, no vision, and hardly no representation. All I can say Grand Bahama and Abaco really deserve better and far more than what this government has given them as people, constituency, and or island. Hardly no representation don't mean no representation. I didn't say anything. Mr. Speaker, Mr. Speaker, Mama said, see, Mr. Speaker, I'm not a novice to this place. And so let me borrow the words of South Andros. Let me utter them for the very first time. Besides Mama, I'm a senior man in this place. So unless they forgot, my parliamentary run began in 2007. Marco City and Elizabeth joined me in the upper house. So I just want you to know, that's why I could think on my feet. I sat at the feet, Mr. Speaker, of Sir Lyndon, former Prime Minister Perry Christie, Right Honorable Hubert Ingram, and now under Hubert Alexander Minutes. I sat under them all. Okay? So I'm not a novice. I'm not a novice. Mr. Speaker, I started to speak about Mama. I want to continue. Mama had some good sayings. And Mama's sayings are now really becoming very prevalent to me. Mama's dead and gone, but Mama knew what she was saying. Mama said, time longer than rope. As I invoke in retrospect these almost 4 years in this parliament, I have developed an affinity for Mama's words. When I first came in this place, Mr. Speaker, so many who used to sit over there laughing at me over here have now joined me over here. Even you, Mr. Speaker, if you weren't sitting up there, you too, under the present circumstances, would be over here. Mr. Speaker, what's so ironic? Some people who used to sit over there, laughing at me over here, can hardly smile while they sit over here with the rest of us. Who they met here, eh? who they met here before they came from over there. Mama words were right. Mama words were right. I talking to Centerville, I talking beyond. Mr. Speaker, Centerville might reach, but the Bahamas, I think we had 30,000 now listening. Mama's words were right. Time brings on changes. Mama also told me, son, you ain't past nothing till you're dead. You understand, you was old school young man. Yes. And they also say sticks and stones, but words will never, but that ain't true. Word harming all kind of people. Words harming people right now. Mama said, yeah, and since you're gone there, not because Mama also said, a hint to the wise is sufficient. Mama also said, son, you ain't past nothing till you're dead. Yeah, thank you, word. But Mama said, you ain't past nothing till you're dead. And old folks would say, what goes around comes around. So be careful how you treat folks, especially in this neck of the woods. Mr. Speaker, While I served in the Senate from 2007 to 2012, and even when I came into this place in 2017, see, they think Bahamians forget, they don't. And all of that could be laid at the feet when the bell rings. When I came in this place in 2017, I refused, Mr. Speaker, to let anybody throw anything at me. And I believe I should accept it. When you know who you are, and because of whose you are, you comprehend your worth. I certainly do. And I wish that most Bahamians will. Therefore, I won't let anyone, and neither should you, Bahamas, let anyone devalue you while you display humility. Due to this spiritual and philosophical perspective in the other place, and as I serve now in this place, I chose and choose principle over politics and character over money. Mr. Speaker, position of power and money, Bahamas, through you, Mr. Speaker, only magnifies your true character. So Bahamas, through you, Mr. Speaker, when people in here show you who they are, believe that. Believe that. Mr. Speaker, if Rodney Mudco was here, he would say, this is powerful. Mr. Speaker, let me make myself emphatically clear as we move towards this election season. My integrity in this place speaks to the following. Let me say it again. My integrity in this place speaks to the following. I'd rather lose doing what's right than to win doing what's wrong. So come one and all with your letters, your colors, your man or your woman. Pine Ridge, we ready now. Mr. Speaker, to all them sitting across from me, in front of me, or beside me, I speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people of Pine Ridge, who want me to tell you this is my winning season. Mr. Speaker, I must conclude by bringing my dissertation to a close. I just passed by here this evening to thank the people for allowing me this opportunity proportionately to do so frankly and conscientiously. Mr. Speaker, I'm just about through and about to take my seat. And let me thank the members for the first time. This is the first time I've been able to practically deliver a whole speech without any point of order and much hackling, because they recognize that an hour could turn to 2 hours with their help. They finally got it, but they got it late. But better late than never. Mr. Speaker, I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? For those of you who dare ask me again, Mount Moriah, through you, Mr. Speaker. In order, for those of you who ask me, in and out of this place again, in and out of this place, which people? Who people? I came to speak on behalf of the people. The people who are deceived, dejected, deprived, despaired, devalued, disappointed. I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people who are discombobulated, disconnected, discontented, disdained, disenfranchised, defenseless, disillusion, and disparage. I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people who are displaced, disqualified, disrespected, dissatisfied, disturbed, and disunion. I came to speak on behalf of the people. Which people? The people who are domineered, downcast, downgraded, downhearted, duped, dumped, and dying. All these people Pine Ridge spoke and speak for, and will continue to do so, Mr. Speaker, without fear, intimidation, political aggravation, or victimization. I came to speak and will continue to do so on behalf of the people of the Bahamas. I bid the Commonwealth a good evening. Mr. Speaker, Pine Ridge rests.
Thank you, Honorable Member. As many? Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Cat Island, Rumkey, and San Salvador.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We reserve the spot for the member for Angleton.
Thank you, Honorable Member. Chair recognizes the Honorable Member for Southern Shores.
Mr. Speaker, I'm about to move that the business of the House suspends until tomorrow, but I just want to beg your indulgence just to use one line to say Happy International Women's Day. And when it is my time to speak, I will expand on the subject matter. That said, I move that the business of this House suspends until Tuesday, the 9th, which is tomorrow, at 3 p.m.
Honorable members, it has been moved and seconded that the business of this House suspends until 3 p.m. tomorrow, Tuesday, the 9th of March, 2021. As many as are in favor will remain seated. Those who oppose will stand. The business of this House stands suspended until tomorrow, Tuesday, the 9th of March, at 10 a.m., at 3 p.m., 3 p.m., Tuesday, the 9th of March, 2021.